he started our program with $1,000 in cash. So he joined our program, he paid us, he had $1,000 in cash, and he turned it into $30,000 in 6 months just by buying these types of cards. The most money I made on a card this year in 2024 was a card of Shohei Ohtani. But when I actually got the card in, there was something wrong a little bit with the edges, and I actually thought it would get a PSA 9, but the card ended up getting PSA 10, but I ended up selling it. It was like a trade dash cash deal, and I ended up selling it. How do you figure out what a card will be worth when it's graded to figure out if it's worth grading at all? Cam says, how long you going to run this scam for? Well, the scam started in March of 2020. How does someone obtain high-end cards if they have bills to pay and don't have credit cards? Well, we are back for episode number 35 of Beyond the Game, and in this episode, I'm going to answer some amazing questions, and if you stay to the end, I'm going to share with you a sports card purchase that I think is very, very interesting, and I can bet you are not thinking of it. And if you're new to this, hi, my name is Eric Michael. I've sold over $5 million in sports cards, and about 4 years ago, I started teaching people how to make money with sports cards, doing stuff just like this, sharing as much free, valuable information as I possibly can, because I have a program to sell you that could benefit a lot of people, and that's why I make this free content, so to get people to my program. But before even thinking about buying my program, I want you to enjoy this free content. I've, the past 10 years of my life, been all over the country, bought and sold sports cards, every single type, and I've been so fortunate from it where I've never had to get a full-time job because sports cards have always paid my bills. But let's get into it. So I'm going to start this off with some questions. Let me take a quick drink here. All right. So, first question. We have Tharindu. So this is actually a comment from Instagram. Do you send stuff to PSA in the Beckett casing for a crossover? Or did you crack the Beckett casing and send it to PSA as a raw card? So, okay, to answer your question, I always crack it out. I very rarely ever do a crossover. And the reason so for those of you guys that don't know what he's talking about, okay, let me explain. So, there's something in sports called a crossover. And no, this is not a basketball term. Right, so there's two like big grading companies, right? There's PSA, and then there is Beckett, okay? Now, so PSA, let's just say, for example, a PSA 10, let's talk a random LaMelo Ball card. Okay, let's say we're talking about some random LaMelo Ball card here, and a PSA 10 of this card. So let's say a PSA 10 is worth $1,000, and Beckett is not as lucrative as PSA, so a Beckett 9.5 might be worth $500, call it. Now, what you can do in sports cards is called a crossover. So, let's say you have this card of LaMelo Ball, and this is going to be terrible what I'm about to do, but let's say this is the card. I'm not good at drawing, and let's say this card is graded a Beckett 9.5. Fantastic. And this is, Jesus Christ, and this is LaMelo. Woo, that's LaMelo. Now, if this card is graded a Beckett 9.5, it might have in the card, 9.5 centering, 9.5 edges, 9.5 surface, 9.5 corners. These are like the subgrades of the card. So what you can do is say, okay, I know this card right now is worth $500, right, as a Beckett 9.5, but I want it to be a PSA 10, right, because we just discovered a PSA 10 is worth $1,000. So you can take this card and then, you can submit it for grading to PSA. And they will look at the card in the Beckett case, and if they determine they think it's a PSA 10, they'll crack it out of the Beckett case and give it a 10. Now, the thing here is you have higher odds of getting a PSA 10 if you crack it out of the case and send it raw versus sending it in this Beckett holder, right? So like, let me explain. So you can send this card to PSA, and you could send it like this, like my little drawing. You could send it as a Beckett 9.5, or you can just send the card raw. That's just a raw card. Now, PSA, because they need to just population control and just not let every Beckett 9.5 that looks good as a PSA 10, they're going to make it harder if they see a card come in as a Beckett 9.5, right? Because there is some human bias to it, right? And PSA probably values their company and their grades more than Beckett, and they don't want to just say, okay, any Beckett 9.5 is just going to be a PSA 10. They're very, very strict on it. However, if they see a raw card come in that looks good, they're a lot more likely to give it a PSA 10. This is just my experience. I can't say this for facts, but this is just my experience. So whenever I send cards into PSA, me personally, I like to crack it out of the case and send it raw. I like to send it raw, and not as a Beckett 9.5, because I believe my chances, and based on my experience, are a lot less sending it as a 9.5. But once again, you have to be able to do the math, right? If let's play a nice little math example here, right? Let's say, right, we have a Beckett 9.5 is $500, and the raw version of this card is worth $200, and a PSA 10 is worth $800. Well, in this scenario, it's not worth it to crack this card out of the Beckett 9.5. You're losing so much money if it doesn't grade a PSA 10, right? So in this scenario, right, I would send the card in as a Beckett 9.5. But when I get cards as a Beckett 9.5 and send them to PSA, I don't play with these types of numbers. What I like to do is I like to see something like this. I like to see, okay, a Beckett 9.5 is, let's say, $500, and a raw card is like $400, and a PSA 10 is $1,000. In this scenario, I'm a lot more comfortable cracking this Beckett 9.5 and sending it in raw to get graded as a 10. Because in this scenario, buying a card that's a Beckett 9.5, the condition should be pretty solid. You should be able to get 70 to 80% of them to get a 10, at least in my experience. So I'm a lot more comfortable. But if it doesn't grade a 10, oh well, so be it. You're going to lose a little bit of money. But like my favorite thing to do when it comes to cracking out is actually this. So my favorite thing to do is, let's do a weep. So I actually like to buy cards as a Beckett 9. Oh, whoops, that's terrible. As a 9, and a 9 will be worth like $300, and a raw card is worth the same. So you're cracking out of the case and you're not losing any money. But a PSA 10 will be like $1,200. This is what I like to do. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what the hell? Why would a card that's graded a Beckett 9 grade a PSA 10? That doesn't make any sense. Well, you got to know what you're doing here, right? So a Beckett 9, if I see something like, right, so with Beckett, there's like 4 subgrades, right? There's let me do this in a different color. Hold on, I'm trying to make my colors better here just so it pops a little bit more, right? So, right, you have corners, you have edges, you have centering, and you have surface, okay? And if I see something like this, like 9.5 corners and 8.5 edges and 9.5 centering and, I don't know, like 9 surface, a card like this has the potential to get a PSA 10 because PSA cares a lot about corners, right? So you want your corners to be good, and they care a lot about centering. Edges are like, I see all the time Beckett screw up and give a card 8.5 edges when there's nothing wrong with the card. Like, just to give you an example, so the most money I made on a card this year. Wow, this question's going on for a while. But the most money I made on a card this year in 2024 was a card of Shohei Ohtani. So it was a 2018 Ohtani Atomic Bowman Chrome Auto, right? And so I paid, as the card was graded a Beckett 9, I paid $9,750 for it via cash. A guy I knew in Pennsylvania, I had one of my coaches go and get it. And the card is graded a Beckett 9. And the card, from what I remember, it was, so the centering was a 9, and the corners were a 9.5, and the edges were 8.5, and the surface was a 9. And I looked at the card, and when I do this, I try to not look at the subgrades and just try to look at the card and pretending I'm buying it raw and just saying, okay, what do I think of this card? What do I think it would grade if it was just raw? And I remember looking at this card and saying, okay, the setting's graded a 9, but it actually looks kind of good. And the corners and the surface looked pretty good too. And the edges also looked good, but when I actually got the card in, there was something wrong a little bit with the edges, and I actually thought I would get a PSA 9, but the card ended up getting a PSA 10, thankfully, and it cost me $1,500 in grading fees. But I ended up selling it. It was like a trade dash cash deal, and I ended up selling it for $30,000. So I like to buy cards as a Beckett 9 and really take a risk because I'm confident in my ability to look at a card, if that makes sense. But hopefully that answers your question, Tharin Du. That took a long time to answer that question. Third, I like your YouTube name here. This is a YouTube comment. Third Eyes Open, 194. How do you figure out what a card will be worth when it's graded to figure out if it's worth grading at all? It's a good question. And I got the answer for you. So there's multiple ways to do it, but the easiest thing to do is this, right? So if you go to eBay, right, and we search Stroud. So I'm not good at typing on this thing. Stroud Silver Prism 2023, and we search. If you go on the eBay app, you click filter at the top right and click show more and go all the way to the bottom. You can see sold items. So you could see, for example, if you look in the middle, I can't draw in this section, but if you look in the middle left, you'll see that card's worth $404 graded a 10. So you can literally see what a card is worth graded as a 10 just off of eBay sales. And if you try to find a raw version, so like a PSA 9, these PSA 9s here in the middle right are worth about the same as raw, roughly. And you could say that's probably worth grading, right? Because my rule, let's see if we can find any raw. So so there's some that sold for closer to 200. But my rule is this when it comes to grading sports cards, right? So I call it the 2X rule. So now there's a little bit more that goes into this, right? You want to be buying cards at the right time and in good condition and all that stuff. But I want to at least double my money when I'm grading a card, right? So if I'm going to spend $150 on a card, I want to ask myself, can I net after fees and everything? Actually, in this situation, what would happen is if you're spending $150 for the card, your cost to grade, and shipping and all that cost to grade and ship, this might be another, call it $30. So, not $300, $30. Oh, that's not good either. See, I'm still getting used to this whole iPad thing. So, $30, right? So your total investment is a staggering $180. So I want to ask myself, okay, can I net at least $360 after fees and everything? That's the question I have to ask myself. If I could, I'd deem the card worth buying. If this card grades a 10. So that's what I ask myself. If it's under 2 times, I try not to buy it. And then also on top of that, right, there's some other factors that go into this. Like you want to be buying cards at the right time. Hopefully, if you're sending a card to a grading company and it's going to sit at the grading company for 1 or 2 months, it's going to appreciate. So there's a few other things, but like this is like my simple rule. Hopefully that answers your question. Louis says, great video. Thank you. I do have a question. What about a newbie that hasn't collected in over 20 years? How would they know what player to buy when they are at the $1 to $5 cards? Is there a list you go off of players who are hot and try to find those kinds of cards? So, Louis, to answer your question, so if you start buying and selling sports cards, you're about to fall into the same trap every single other person does. So, one, cards that are $1 to $5, I don't know what you do with those because like I just explained going back up here, this 2x rule, if you're going to send cards in to get graded, you want to at least double your money. It's going to be hard to do that with cards that are $5 because if you buy a card for $5 and it costs $20 to get it graded, it's just difficult. And then number 2, if you're doing sports cards correctly, you want to be buying what's not hot and then selling it when it's hot, right? So timing the market is a huge thing, and that's people fail to realize that. Like, just to give you a simple example, so like timing, right? Let's just say we have football. We have good old football, right? Football gets hot, right around the National Card Show in July into August, right? This is when football's hot. And then you want to be buying it when it's not hot, right? That makes common sense, right? Because you want to be buying low and selling high. It's not hot, and like it depends on the player, but like really January to like call it April leading up to the draft. This is when football's not hot, even though it's red and it looks like it's hot. That's when you want to be buying football, and so you want to be actually buying what's not hot, right? If you're buying what's hot, most guys don't sustain value. It's just how it works. Hopefully that makes sense. And let's see what else we got here. We got Juan says, hi, Eric. When you say Prism, does this also go for baseball cards or just mainly football and basketball? I read that baseball goes more for Topps, Chrome, and Bowman. So, okay, I think I know what you're trying to say. So you're probably referring to some sort of YouTube video I did. And so Prism, okay, let me explain this. So there's something called licensed products, okay? So Panini, as we stand right now, they have the license for football and basketball, okay? And Panini has a bunch of different products under them, like Prism and National Treasures and Select. So Prism, because it's under Panini, their cards, if this is a card, they can have the logo of teams on their cards. Sounds stupid, but it's actually a big deal. And these cards are considered their true or real rookie cards, whatever you want to call it. As opposed, so Panini has the license for football and basketball and a few others, and soccer and stuff. And then you have Topps. So Topps has the license for baseball, and that's why Bowman Chrome, so Bowman Chrome, their cards have players' logos on it. So for the most part, there are some exceptions to this rule here, but you want to be buying cards that are licensed because they hold much more weight and you have much more of a profit margin, especially if you're grading cards from raw to graded when you go and sell them, right? Because when you let's say you buy a card here, right? And, right, you buy a card. Let me make this organized. So you buy a card, right? And then you grade it. And then you sell it. Well, if you're selling a card that is a PSA 10, well, think about that for a second. If someone's buying a card of a player that's graded at 10, it's probably because they're collecting the player for the long term, right? And anyone who's doing that wants a player's best rookie cards. So for football and basketball, right, it's going to be Panini because, at the moment, because that is players' true rookie cards. And for baseball, it's going to be Topps, right? That's how it works. So hopefully that's a nice answer to your question. Hopefully that makes sense. So Clayton Clifford 2323 says, so the thing about it is, what if I have no desire to join a break after break after break of the same product? What if I only want to join one or two breaks of, let's just stick with the case you used as an example. Then I do 2 breaks and I don't join anymore. The formula doesn't add up. I spent $240 to $260 on 2 spots. Maybe I hit, maybe I didn't. But I didn't spend $3,000 on a personal box myself. So, okay, I know exactly what you're referring to. So, I have a video that talks about, this video talks about, like, me, like, why breaking boxes is bad. Okay, so, and for Clayton, exactly what you just said, that is the exact problem and exactly what breakers and people who sell this stuff want you to think. So you were falling into the trap, but I'm here to save you. So don't worry. But let me get a sip of my drink here first. You know, on Sundays, random side note. So Monday through Saturday, for the most part, I eat very healthy. Straight chicken, almost no carbs. But Sunday is like my cheat day, especially because football's on. And I just eat everything that's terrible. Wings, Domino's, fucking ice cream, everything. And like my mouth is always like buttery and garlicky the next morning. And I do these podcasts a lot of the time on Monday. That's why you always see me. I keep drinking over and over and over again because of all the sodium in my mouth. Random side note. But, okay, so Clayton. Boy, you're falling into the trap, buddy. Let me save you. All right. Let me explain something to you, Clayton. If you breaking, right? Let's say there's a box of cards, right? And let's use that example. It's worth $3,000, right? Let's do the math here. It's worth $3,000. So if you go and buy this box of cards for $3,000, and let's say you simulate this scenario 1,000,000 times over. I don't know the exact math, but your average, let's say your average net, like when I say net, I mean the value in cards you get back from opening up this $3,000 box. I mean, if I had to put a lot of money on it, I would say it's not over $1,500. Let's say it's $1,500, right? So you're losing about half your money. It's kind of like, it's just gambling, right? People do it for fun, but you're going to lose money in the long run, right? So it's a losing investment to begin with, right? Now, what breakers will do is they'll take this nice little $3,000 box and they'll split it up. Let's say they'll split it up 10 spots at $400 per spot, which means this equals $4,000, right? And let's say the way they split this up is they give like 3 random teams to each person that gets one of these spots. So yes, Clayton, you are correct. Are you only spending $400? Yeah, you are only spending $400. But if you were to simulate that scenario 1,000,000 times over, it's, if you want the nerdy term here, it's called expected value. So the expected value, all this means is if you were to simulate this scenario 1,000,000 times over, what would be the average you would get? Or in this case, literally in this scenario, you are paying, you don't see it because you're only buying a tenth of it, but I promise you, you are paying $4,000 for this box. And it's disguised, right? Maybe, you join one break and it's $100 for a spot, right? And then maybe you join another break and it's $200 for a spot. Maybe you join another break and it's $150 for a spot. But what I could tell you is that you are consistently paying 10 to 20% over market value for a box of cards. And to begin with, even market value, box of cards, opening up that box is bad. But that's what you're doing, okay? And I get what you're saying, right? You're only, you're only buying like, one or two spots, but you're doing it in this break and that break and this break. And like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, okay? Like, there's nothing wrong with breakers and people opening up boxes and cases, right? Because believe it or not, this is what drives the hobby, right? All the cards that you see me talk about and buy, and my students buy and all that stuff, well, they come from these boxes and cases, right? That's how they're born, essentially. So I'm not saying, but I am telling you, your math is wrong. And as long as, thanks. Edward said that hair looks real. It is real. My hair is real. But it was taken from the back of my head and put it on top. But yeah, so trust me, Clayton, you're playing a terrible losing game and you should not expect to make money. As long as you're okay with, hey, I'm having fun, you're probably going to lose money. It's like buying a ticket to a sporting event, right? It costs money. You're paying for entertainment. That's what you're doing. So, Clayton, hopefully that makes sense. Clint. Or no, not Clint. Travis Shoemaker, comment, YouTube, says, love the content and love the hair. Thank you. I appreciate that. The whole hair transplant surgery, I'm actually not, this is like going to sound weird to say because I've had two of them. So I had one in 2022 and it was so good I had one more. And this is going to sound funny, but I'm actually not the person that care like too much about my cosmetics. And honestly, I don't look that bad bald because they shave your head when you do the surgery. I feel like I didn't look that bad bald. But it's about $8,000 for the surgery, and $8,000 is, I'm not saying this to be cocky, but it's not a lot of money to me. And I was like, this is just great value. $8,000, you sit in a chair for 6 hours, and boom, 3-4 months later, you have hair for life. It's a great deal, right? That's a great deal. I'm all about value, and I was like, how can I say no to that? Right, I like my hair, so screw it. My question. So this is Travis's question. I'm trying to buy raw and get graded. I'm sticking to 2021 to 2024 Silver Prism NBA. Brandon Miller, Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham cards are very difficult to grade. I just can't seem to find any that are centered. Am I being too picky? And even if I did find one, how can you truly see the surface and quality of the edges? Even corners from a pick can be hard. I started with $42 and I'm over $500 now. I try to find deals at shows or Facebook, but I want to take that next step. Okay. Ooh, that's a tough one. All right. So why only stick to only Silver Prism? Silver Prism cards are actually pretty hard to grade because one, they're not centered a lot of the time, but two, they're the surfaces, because they're like shiny. Here's a nice little rule of thumb for you. Any surface that's kind of like shiny, it's just harder to grade. It's like foily and it gets scratched easy, right? Just think about it, right? It's like if something's shiny, it's easy to see a scratch, right? As opposed to something's not. But I wouldn't like just only go for that stuff. Like, let me show you an example here. So, let's go to eBay. Let me see. I don't even know what these cards are actually. Let me just look here. What these cards are selling for. Stroud, Disco, Prism, 2023. Let's take a look at this card. I want to show you this card, a card like this, because it's going to hopefully prove a point here. Let's see what this card sells for. It's a 10. There's one here. Okay. So this card, you can see. Okay. So there in the middle left over there, this card sells for almost $200 as a 10. And a raw one did $86. That sounds high. Then $99. That also sounds high. And then $68 over there. So this card raw, I could tell you, is like $60, $70. Okay. And these cards, it's the same margin essentially as Silver Prisms, except take my word for it, they are 10 times easier to grade. So a really good card to get graded, like I get what you're trying to do with the whole Silver Prism thing. Like, it's a very common card. They're easy to sell. They have high margins. But colored prism, not Silver Prism, but colored prism. So like colored prism, right? So like here's some good examples, right? So we have like Disco, like I just showed you. Green is an easy-ish card to grade. Like stuff like Pink Ice is pretty easy to grade. Orange Ice, is Orange Ice still a thing? I'm not sure if Orange Ice is still a thing in the new Prism. Orange Ice, Red, white and blue is also a good one. There's a bunch of others, but these are all of these for the most part are like, it depends on the player, but cards that are like $10 to like $100 for the most part raw, and you could double to triple your money pretty easily getting them graded as a 10. And I had a student who's actually a coach for us now. His name is Joe. Almost not all of them, but I would say 90% of the cards he purchased was this, what I'm showing you, colored prism from basketball or football. And he started our program, this is like a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago. He started our program with $1,000 in cash. So he joined our program, he paid us, he had $1,000 in cash and actually spending money to purchase cards with. And he turned it into $30,000 in 6 months just by doing this, just by buying these types of cards. They're easier to grade. Like if you know what you're doing, you can grade like 60 to 70% of them to get a 10 pretty easily, if not more. So I would actually say that. And Mario, so we send out an email once a week to fill out a form to answer any questions. Then also I answer all questions from my YouTube. That's where I'm getting these questions from. All right. Hopefully that answers your question. Clint says, if you were to have any Marvel cards graded, Marvel Spider-Man, Hollow Foil, excellent condition, but still ungraded at this point, which ones would you recommend, if any, be worth grading? And which grading company could I get away with grading it, aside from PSA, knowing this is the most sought-after grading company and most expensive as well? I would still want to have a reputable grading company behind my grading process. I've studied and I've tried to understand what would be the smartest path to take. Any advice would be helpful. So I don't know that much about Marvel cards, to be honest with you. But let's take a look here. So you're saying 1994 Spider-Man? I don't know if this is going to be on Market Movers. Let's see. See if we can find any Marvel cards so I can give you like a rough. All right, so 1990 Impel Marvel Universe. I don't know that much about this card, but let's see. So this card, it looks like, let's do this. Raw is about $4. A PSA 9 is about $26. A PSA 10 is about $380. Back at 9.5. That hasn't sold in a long time. Okay, so what I would say, so it looks like PSA 10 is worth $380. SGC 10 is worth like $375, but there hasn't been a sale in like a year. But I mean, you just have to do the math. Like, what? So like, this is what I would look at. Here you go. This is what I would look at. So here's the answer to your Marvel cards, right? So I'm just making this up. Okay, this is the same principle applies for every card. So let's say you have this card of Spider-Man. Let's put the Spider-Man, in red. Spider-Man. And let's pretend this card is worth, raw is $10. And, let's say a PSA 9 is worth $50. And let's say a PSA 10 is worth $400, okay? Because really, I could what I could tell you is you're either going to want to send these cards to PSA or SGC. But let's say the grading cost for this card, PSA is going to be more expensive. Let's say they might charge you, I don't know, $40, right? So this is example number one. And then let's say on the other side here, we have SGC, and let's say, raw is $10. And let's say an SGC 9.5 is $40. And let's just say an SGC 10 is $300. So an SGC 9.5 and a PSA 9 are kind of like similar-ish, and an SGC 10 is, that's kind of like a PSA 10. So on the surface, and let's say grading cost to grade here, with SGC it's gonna be cheaper. Actually don't know what it is right now, but I know it's gonna be cheaper. So let's say it's $15, right? So on the surface, you might be saying to yourself, "Oh, wait a second. Why would I not send my cards to PSA? Because it just makes more sense." However, what you want to be doing if you want to like get into the weeds a bit, there's something called the population report. Okay, let me explain something. So there's something called the population report. So you might go on here and you might find for PSA that there are, I don't know, 1,000 of these cards graded. Okay. And let's say out of these 1,000 that are graded, let's say we have an 8, we have a 9, we have a 10. And let's say out of these 1,000 graded, there were 500 that got an 8, 300 that got an, oh, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. So let's say there's 300 that got a 9, and let's say 200 that got a 10. So in this case, 20% of the total population got a 10. That kind of tells you how hard PSA is with the card. But let's say with SGC, there was 1,000 cards graded as well. Cards graded. And let's say there were 300 that got an SGC 9. And then another, 300 that got an SGC 9.5. And there were 400 that got an SGC 10. Well, wait a second. In this scenario right here, your odds of getting a 10 are double what they are here, right? And it would make more mathematical sense to send it to SGC, because even though you're getting essentially 25% less for the card than a PSA 10, well, you have double the chances of getting a PSA 10, and it comes back to you way faster, and the cost to get it graded is actually cheaper. So that's what you want to be looking at. Hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of like in the weeds of it. But it just depends on what the card sells for as a PSA 10 versus SGC 10, and then kind of looking at the population report. And if the population report is on their website, on both their websites, you can just go find it. And yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. We got a few more here. So let's see. We got Jordan. Jordan, I've only got 1 hour per day, Monday through Thursday, and approximately 3 to 4 hours every Friday to mess with card flipping, whatnot, streaming, buying, selling. I can attend weekend card shows, and I could spend a couple hours each evening on the hobby grind. Do I have enough time to make $400 to $500 a month, or should I just quit now? Should I just quit now? I wasn't expecting that at the end. No, you have more than enough time. All right, Jordan, let me challenge you for a second. So you say you have 3 to 4 hours every Friday, 1 hour per day, Monday through Thursday. I don't know your schedule, but I bet you spend at least an hour a day on social media. So if you cut that out, that would be an extra hour a day. The average American spends 2 hours a day on social media. So I'm not going to look at the screen time on your phone, but I bet you have more time. But even with the time you have, an hour a day, and then 3 to 4 hours every Friday. So it sounds like you have about 10 hours roughly a week. So like, here you go. Here's a nice little analogy, right? So if you have, let's say you have 10 hours per week. This is pretty common. So like, if you ever see my marketing, this is actually something I talk about. This is why sports cards are so great. So if you ever see my ads, my marketing, and I always talk about, hey, like this is a simple, realistic side hustle. You can make a few grand a month, and you just need like 30, 45 minutes, an hour a day. It's because it's actually true. Because this is how it checks out, right? Let's say the average card you buy and grade makes you, so here, let me break this down, right? So once you know what you're doing, I'm not talking about card shows here. I'm just talking about online. Once you know what you're doing, you can buy one card per hour, right? So what does that equal to? Well, that equals to that you're buying 10 cards a week, all right? And if you're buying 10 cards a week, let's say the average card you buy, average card equals $100, right? And a the profit, if this card were to 10, the average profit, I should have made that in green, let's say is 150. But not every single card is going to grade a 10. If you know what you're doing, about 70% of the cards that you send in will grade a 10. So 70% are going to 10, which means that if you buy 10 cards a week, you are making on a weekly basis 7 times 150, which is, what is that? 7 times 100, 700, 700, and then 1400. So that's 1100 or 1050, right? So I think that's right. So that means, in this simple math example, you can make 1050 profit per week on the cards you send in to get graded. Now you're going to lose some money on like getting some 9s and grading costs and stuff. So, it's safe to say what we could do here is, right, we could minus at least, $300, but it's not hard to make $750 per week in this example. And, what is that per month? That's that's $3,000 per month, actually. Exactly. So that's like $3,000 per month profit, right? And that's with 10 hours a week. And that's buying one card per hour. And the average card you're buying is $100. And the average profit you're making on each card that gets a 10 is $150. Now, you're obviously not going to make this money right away because you have to build that momentum and you have to know what you're doing, because I'm just talking about once you get rolling. But 10 hours a week, dude, that's more than enough time. You could do a lot of things in a little bit of time if you are actually focused. It's taken, my buddy and I are writing a new webinar. A webinar is a presentation that a lot of you guys may have seen, right? When you see my ad, there's a presentation on the next page, and it's called a webinar. It's like a long, long slideshow, and it's me explaining the idea of making money with sports cards. And at the end, I pitch you my program. And that webinar originally, the first time I ever wrote it, took me and my business partner a month of every day, all day work, nonstop. We locked ourselves in an Airbnb in Kissimmee, Florida. It's next to Orlando. And it took us a month, but now we kind of know what we're doing and we're much more focused. My buddy, his name's Kavi, he's now our CMO. He's been working on the webinar and I've been writing the script, and it's going to take us about 7 to 10 days to finish. And it's almost like writing a movie. 500 slideshows, a 2-hour script. It's pretty intense, but with extreme focus, you can do a lot of things in a little bit of time. Hopefully that answers your question, Jordan. I don't know why I put this question here. I just thought it was funny. I got to laugh. Cam says, how long are you going to run this scam for? Well, the scam started in March of 2020. I think it was March 15th is the day we launched our first ad. So it's been, the scam has been going for 4.5 years at this point. It's a long time to run a scam. But it's not a scam. Go look at our reviews online. You want to talk about running a scam a long time? We had someone join our program last week, and he lost. So he sold multiple businesses. The first business him and his business partner sold, they took the money, $25 million, and invested it with who? Guess who? Bernie Madoff. That's a scam. And he told me, I was so curious as to because I've seen, I don't know if you guys have seen the Bernie Madoff documentary, or I guess it's not a documentary, it's more like a series on his life. Very interesting. And Bernie Madoff was the smartest scam artist of all time. He would actually make it difficult to invest with him. He wasn't promising crazy returns 7 to 10% per year. And he had the in with these, super luxury country clubs in West Palm Beach, Florida, where there's a lot of money. And that's how he made a lot of his money. But what's crazy about the whole Bernie Madoff thing is he was actually successful. He was worth millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars already without the Ponzi scheme. So you have to think to yourself, how sick in the head do you need to be how much more do you need? How much more money do you need? But yeah, Cam, I would suggest looking at our Trustpilot. That's a good place to go. So Mark says, hi, sir. I'm a retired guy and just started out with cards. I have lots of cards in the late 80s and early 90s. Well, bad news for you, they're probably not worth much, which is what the next thing you said. So I started selling team sets with new commons. Plus, I will have about 15 graded when the order is done. Can you give me some tips, positive or negative? So your cards from the 80s and 90s, not worth that much money, unfortunately. That's just the reality of it. But I would take whatever money you can get from it, and the way to make like quick, consistent money is with like modern cards. So, I mean, I have a million trainings on it on my YouTube. You can go and look. But modern cards, getting them graded, that's the fastest, easiest way to make money. The cards are volatile. There's a lot of them. They're new. They're grading worthy. That's the best general tips I can give you. Oh, this is a good one. I got to take a drink for this one. I remember reading this. So, Mr. Seth says, as a 16-year-old, I've reached out to many people, and they all say that to start a sports card business, gaining a following is essential. They said to do this through YouTube. Do you agree as someone with tons of experience and knowledge in this area? Seth, that is a terrible, terrible, terrible piece of advice. With sports cards, you need, does it help a little? Maybe, but you need zero following. Zero. I have a big following with sports cards. None of my deals come from it. So I bought and sold sports cards and sold millions and millions of dollars in sports cards from the years of 2015 to 2020. I had no following. The only thing I had was a Facebook, and the profile picture was a picture of a card. That's it. But I was just in all the Facebook groups, and that's where I would do a lot of my business. Having a following, unless you're breaking open boxes and cases, that could help. But in terms of flipping sports cards, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you have 100 million followers or 0 followers. You can make a lot of money without knowing anybody. If you have the right card at the right time and you post it to any Facebook group, go to any card show, people are going to buy it from you, whether you're 16, 11, 8, 35, 55, big following, no following. I literally had no social media from 2015 to 2020. The only reason I have social media is for this, what you're looking at right now. And if it was up to me, honestly, if I could grow Major League profits at the same rate without having to get on camera, I would. But it's not the reality of it. The way, marketing works is I need to give as much free value as possible so people trust me, and then, they buy my program. But so that terrible piece of advice, wouldn't do it. And just to give you another example, like one of the biggest companies, like in my world of like coaching programs, like online education space, they have no following. They only run ads, no following, and they are the biggest in our space. They do over $10 million a month. So you don't need a following, especially with sports cards. Doesn't help really at all. Let's see. Rod says, where do you find information about print runs for base, parallels, and short prints? Hard to judge value when you don't know how many were printed of a particular card. Thanks. Yeah, don't need that stuff at all. So I have no idea how to, it's somewhere. You can just Google it. I'm sure you can find print runs of cards. But let me challenge you with this, Rod. So going back to this example of the CJ Stroud card, right? This disco card that sells for as a 10. You could see, where was that example with this as a 10? Over then the left-hand side, it sold for $192. Why do I care how many of this card is printed? If there's 10 of them, 100 of them, a million of them, if this is what it sells for, that's all that matters. So you should be using recent sales on eBay to determine what a card is worth, because that's what it's worth. It's worth what people are willing to pay for it. Whether there's been 10 printed of it or a million printed of it, who cares? Because the name of the game is about money, not how many times it was printed. So that's what I would say to that. Sean, do you track all of your purchases and sales to keep track of profit on each card? If so, what is your process? I like that question. So the way my tracking process goes, now it's a little bit different because I buy higher end cards. But so what I track is the card, right? So this could be like Prism 2023 Wembanyama. The platform I bought it on. So this could be eBay, Facebook, etc. I don't know why I track. I don't know how helpful that is, but I track it. The next one is amount paid. That's the next thing I track. The next thing I track is, so this is super, super key and important, the buyer. So I include his name and a link to Facebook or eBay store, or I put his phone number in here, because when you have a spreadsheet of all people you've bought cards from, well, guess what? What you can do if you're bored one day, you could go back into the spreadsheet and go message the people you have bought cards from in the past, because if you've been able to strike a deal once in the past, probably worth it. Or you could probably do it in the future, right? There's a saying in business, the fortune is in the follow-up. That's exactly what this is. The fortune is in saving people's contact information and reusing the same information, so you don't need to go out and find new deals all the time. So a link to the buyer, that's super key. The cost to grade, that's also what I track. Sale price, and then we have fees, whether maybe there were no fees, maybe it was PayPal fees, eBay fees, whatever. And then the last thing I track is how much I net. And then the last thing I track is, profit, loss. Oh, and then the last thing I track is this is actually fuck this up. This is the seller, and this is the buyer. And I do the same thing here as I do here. I save their link and save their contact information, because when I need to sell cards in the future, I can just message them. So that's what I save. Or that's my tracking process for the most part. And it's on a Google spreadsheet. Michael says, I have a Mickey Mantle autographed baseball. How do I know if it's real or not? It's probably fake, if you're asking me, to be honest. But what I would say is, so the way to know if it's real, send it until they get authenticated. JSA is the biggest authentication company. And what I would say about a Mickey Mantle card is, if we go to Google here, check this out. This is but I bet a lot of you guys don't know this about a Mickey Mantle card. So Mickey Mantle, right? If you look at his autograph, Mickey Mantle auto. Check this out. So if you look here, so let me try to forge his signature real quick. So like this, no wait, that's terrible. So hold on a second. Okay. So this autograph you see right here with that little loop here, that's terrible. But that little loop, this is his new, that's like his new autograph. That was his autograph in the 80s and the 90s. And when he was like a drunk and needed money, he did a lot of autograph signings. So that's how he used to sign. But if you look here, check this out. Let's try to find one. All right, you see this? You see this baseball? How this autograph's different, right? This autograph, the M is like this. It's bad, but you get it. So the M, there's no loop at the bottom. If there's a Mickey Mantle autographed baseball or whatever with no loop at the bottom, what you're looking at here, and this is a replica, but what you're looking at here is worth tons more. I don't know how much exactly. Let's try to find an old. Let's try to find an old one here. Let's see here. I don't know why the keyboard's popping up like this, but. So let's try to find a good one here. You see, I can't even find pictures. That's how hard they are. There's none. I can't even find a picture of his old autograph. But his old autograph has a staggered M, like this. Yeah, like this is his old autograph. I mean, it's pretty faded, but you see how the M is staggered? There's no loop at the bottom. So if you have this one, which you don't, or this one is worth less. This one is worth tons and tons and tons and tons of money. A lot of money. That one. But a nice little interesting thing about Mickey Mantle. Brian, How does someone obtain high-end cards if they have bills to pay and don't have credit cards? Well, that's kind of like asking me, how can I have $1,000 if I only have 100? You can't. You don't. If you're broke, like this is what I'm gonna start asking people, saying to people who ask me questions along the lines of, I don't have money, how do I get started? You don't get started. You don't start buying and selling sports cards. You have problems in your life that you need to fix. Your bills are too high, your income's too low. You need to get a better job and save more money and be as cheap as humanly possible. And then save up money. Even I did an example in the last podcast. Even if you make $3,000 a month after taxes, you could save money. So you have different problems that I'm not qualified to help you with. Is OfferUp a good place to find cards? Yeah, you could find pretty weird, wacky deals and get good deals on OfferUp. It's kind of like Craigslist vibes. Like, you get some weirdos on there, but you can find some decent stuff on there. That's kind of like where you hit like a home run. You like find a lot of cards for like $50 and you get them graded and sell them for thousands. But yeah, I've seen that happen for sure. So okay, so that's it for the sports card questions. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. The questions are fun. It gives me a lot. Because I've been doing this content for so long. Sometimes I feel like I talk about the same thing all the time, which I know I don't. But the questions kind of like give like a new life to it. But some other things I wanted to talk about. So I said I'm going to tell you guys a card that I think is a good purchase. So a few things. So we had someone post a review, a bad review. So this guy paid us, joined the program, didn't do anything. And then he posted a review that says we bribe people to give good reviews. And we do. That's exactly what we do. So what's interesting, I think this is fascinating, because people in our program, we get tons of success stories. Like, you guys have seen a bunch of them, like tons. It's just not that difficult to make money with sports cards. Like, I wish I could say I'm a great teacher. Am I? Maybe, maybe not. But sports cards are just pretty simple to make money with. And people who have success don't like to talk. But people who don't do anything and don't make any money will leave a bad review right away. It's like when you go to a restaurant, you have a great meal, you're probably not going to leave a good review. But if you have a bad meal, you're a lot more likely to go to Yelp and leave a shitty review, because that's just how people are. It's kind of like why the news, 90% of what they talk about is negative, because negativity spreads 10 times faster than positivity. It's kind of more addictive. So it's like pulling teeth to try to get these students who are making thousands of dollars to leave a good review. So if people have success in our program, we enter them into a raffle if they leave us a review, and we raffle off like random things, only for the people that have made a certain amount of dollars, because people just don't like to talk. It's weird. Like, you would think, like, I would think, like, people who join a coaching program, because a lot of the people who join our program, right, just like you watching this, just like a lot of people are skeptical, right? They see the ads online and they're like, I don't know, online, this guy looks shady, blah, blah, blah. And they're super skeptical, and they start making a few $1,000s a month, and they're super happy. And you would think, oh, hell yeah, they're going to leave a positive review. They actually don't. It's actually kind of pulling teeth to get people to leave positive reviews. So we run a raffle once a month to do that. So yeah, John, you're right. We do bribe people to post good reviews. So my interesting buy, I think this is interesting, in my personal opinion here. So check this out. Let's go to Market Movers. Check out Joe Burrow, right? Joe Burrow, I mean, the Bengals are so terrible. Like, this guy is having, especially after yesterday with the Charger game, like, this guy is just having a incredible season. And there's just, like, they suck. But look at this, right? This card started off, his Prism Silver PSA 10 before the season was like $1,800. And now it's like, actually the last sale was $1,700, but it dipped down like $1,400. I think Burrow is a potentially interesting buy, because wait a little bit. You could see how great he is. People will realize that. Let the Bengals pick up some pieces, or maybe he'll demand a trade. Who knows? Who would Burrow want to get traded to? Maybe they'll trade the Niners, or something and give up like 2 first rounds ready? Niners give up Brock Purdy and 2 or 3 first rounds to the Bengals for Burrow. I said it first. Probably not going to happen, but interesting. But you got to think the Bengals will pick up some pieces and some excitement will build. And this is an example of someone who's went down in value, but he's having a tremendous season. So I think Burrow is a potentially interesting buy. He's just having, I think he has 27 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, something insane. And the Bengals are like 4-7, which is crazy. So that's what I think is an interesting buy. Next thing, you guys want to hear something crazy that happened to me over the weekend? Thanks, Yosib. Inspirational work. Thank you. So here's something crazy. So this is for you older. I know a lot of you older guys might be watching this. I want to show you like how the world of online dating works and like modern dating. And I think it's so interesting how humans behave. All right. So there's this terrible Facebook group, in my opinion. Terrible. It's called Are We Dating the Same Guy? Okay. So this is the way it works. This is insane. So there's this Facebook group in every city called Are We Dating the Same Guy? So there's like, Are we dating the same guy Atlanta? Are we dating the same guy New York? Are we dating the same guy Tampa? Which is where I live. And there's like 70,000 girls in there. Okay. And these, girls are very cautious of guys, right? Because guys are creepy and will do weird things. And they'll, match with a guy on Tinder or Hinge or meet a guy out, and they'll take his picture from his social media and post it in this group and say, hey, any red flags? And so what happens in this Facebook group is, sometimes girls will comment, oh, I went on a date with this guy, he was weird, blah, blah, blah. But what will happen sometimes is girls will just comment without even knowing the guy. Ooh, like he looks like a creep. He looks like a weirdo. I would never. And it influences the girl who made the post, who's talking to the guy, to not talk to the guy anymore. And I think it's a terrible Facebook group because it ruins a lot of guys' chance. Like all girls use this, like a ton. It's crazy. And so 2 things. I have 2 things to say about this. Number 1, as a guy, right? You watching this as a guy right now, because most of you guys are guys, can attest this. If you meet a girl, right, you have 2 different visions in your head. You have like, okay, this girl's wifey material. I'm going to take it slow, show her more respect. Not saying you don't show any respect to girls. And then there's the type of girl that you just kind of want to hook up with and she's good looking, but you would never actually date her or bring her home to your mom. You treat that girl totally different, right? That's just how men work. At least that's how I work and my friends. And what's terrible is you'll meet a girl and it's not like, you disrespected her or anything, but you'll sleep with her and then maybe never hit her up again. And this has not happened to me, by the way. I'm just telling you what happens in this group. And you'll hook up with a girl and, maybe she'll text you and you don't want to really see her again because guys have something called PNL. I'm not going to say the word out loud. But that girl's totally different than another type of one you would treat who you would bring home to your mom. But what will happen is a post will go up in that Facebook group of your picture and the girl who you hooked up with, who you deemed as not waifu material, will comment, he used me, he's an asshole, he slept with me, never texted me again. But is it that terrible as a guy to do that? I mean, girls do it back to guys all the time, right? Girls ghost and stuff all the time. But the story I'm leading on with, so I have a friend who was seeing this guy. Okay, she was seeing this guy, and she said she liked him a lot. And she looked his name up in the group and found him. There was a picture of him. A girl posted any red flags with this guy. And there were a few comments of girls underneath saying like, oh, I used to talk to him and he was okay. He was a little weird, something like that. There were a few different girls commenting. And my friend, who's very attractive, said, yeah, I stopped talking to him because the girls who were commenting that used to talk to him, in her words, were hideous. And right, perception creates reality. And because she saw this guy as someone now that was talking to these girls who she deemed as less good looking, it turned her off. Isn't that crazy how humans work? How you like want what others want and you want what you can't have? Like you're a lot more attractive to a girl if you're talking to other attractive girls. And the guy, I feel bad for the guy who she was talking to, who she cut off because he was talking to a few girls that she deemed as not that good looking. Crazy how it works. And yeah, that's how modern dating works for you older guys. It's fucking nuts. It's fucking crazy. And I'll leave it off with this. So this is one of my most, I wouldn't say proudest moments, but just a happy, good feeling. So the first student that ever joined our program, his name was Brock Meserich. Go look him up on YouTube. He has a YouTube now. He started buying and selling sports cars. Well, I should say this. He used to work in a food truck. It would make $300 a month. And he joined our program. At the time, it was like $800. It's more expensive now. But at the time, it was like $800. And he only had $600 on him because he needed some money for cards. So he paid to be $600. And he said, hey, I'll give you the last $200 if it's worth it. And he was the first sale we ever made. This was a long time ago. And I said, okay, that's fair. So he joined the program, and he started making like $4, $5, $6 a month. A lot of Zion Williamson. So he got his entrepreneur itch from sports cards, did that for 2 years, started getting into like AI stuff, YouTube stuff, and recently, so he's been posting on YouTube. He has an AI channel where he kind of goes over like AI softwares and does reviews. He's not really in sports cards anymore. Sports cards is kind of like a stepping stone into entrepreneurship, similar to me. Like sports cards was my stepping stone into major league profits. But he just told me he made $20,000 in profit last month. 22 years old or 23, 22 maybe, 23. Super good feeling. And it all started from, I used to go live in a Facebook group with 20 people in there, and he was one of the few people that would actually listen to what I had to say, and got into sports cards, realized he can make money online, had a terrible failure with the first business he started. He lost a ton of money, but then he was able to resurrect and found his stride, and AI and software is a good place to be because there's a lot of money in it, and he gets these sponsorship deals. And Brock, even though I give you a lot of shit, I'm proud of you, guy. It's a feel-good story. But first student that ever joined the program. Pretty crazy. But that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you're wondering where I answer these questions, we send out an email every week to a form where you could ask questions, where I get the questions from, and also I respond to the YouTube comments. I try to every single week, so you can leave a comment with a question. I try to get to it. But if you are watching this, what I'll do, or if you want to keep watching similar stuff to this, I'll put a video somewhere above my head of something that I think is a good follow-up to this one that I think makes sense. But if you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.